Oh, Alex, you're not wearing your glasses today. Why? Um, well, it was raining buckets, and I had to wear a face mask, and it was a recipe for sadness. Um, anyway, had some thoughts that I wanted to share that, to me, are an incredible and timely perspective that I was so grateful to come across, and I wanted to share it with you. I don't know how many of you have read the Little House on the Prairie books. I've never really seen the show, and I had never read them. But my mother-in-law gave me the whole set when I was pregnant with Judah forever ago, and they were just lost in storage and whatever. And so I came across them last year for the first time in a long time, and I just felt to read them, to start reading to the kids every night. And my tendency is, by the time bedtime comes, guys, I'm baked alive. Like, I want to just close the door and leave. And so this was me grinding against myself for a while to do something that I believed in. And I said, I really want my kids to have the memory of mom reading to them at night, even if I didn't always enjoy it. So I went into it with that in mind. And I had never read the books before. And I thought, well, this will be fun because I don't know what's happening either. And so we've worked through them just like literally every night. It's only been a handful of nights that I haven't read to them, but I've read to them every night. And we've been going through the Little House books, and they seemed, kind of fun and playful. And what I liked is that, they are what they are. There are certain perspectives in there that, I feel like we've grown out of a lot, I think. But I think you know what I mean. But they're history, and it happened. And I want my kids to hear that perspective. Anyway, long story short. So it's not really fiction. It really happened. These events, these things, this way of life. And I just appreciated the simplicity of things. They had fallen on hard times, but they always seemed to pull themselves up by their bootstraps and march on, right? I began on the banks of, or on the shores of Silver Lake, which is the 6th bookend or something like that. And it immediately starts off super depressing. One of the girls goes blind. They're on hard times. They don't have any money. Charles had to walk east 2 years in a row because all the locusts had come and eaten all of their crops. They had no money. It was really terrible. And then they said, we have to leave here and go farther out west. And they ended up going up into, I believe, one of the Dakotas. And the first winter, they ended up basically having to just live in somebody else's house. And by the time that summer had come, we were able to build a little shanty, but they didn't have any money. And so here they are, this couple, 4 kids. The oldest is blind, and they are just plucky people. They try to not dwell on what they can't control. They try to not dwell on the sadness. But even their dog died, guys. And it was a really depressing book to read, to be honest, and I couldn't wait to be done with it because it had really been a treat to have the fun times, like the fun girlhood times in the previous books. And so a couple of weeks ago, actually, I think it was around the time of the beginning of all this quarantine, I began to read The Long Winter. I don't know how many of you are familiar with these books. Now, I grew up on a Morgan horse farm. The Morgan horse is America's first breed. Incredible story all throughout American history. Amazing horses, an amazing breed. And I had grew up knowing that Almanzo Wilder's dad had a Morgan horse farm in upstate New York, where I was from. And that in The Long Winter, Almanzo has us 2 Morgan horses out there. But I had still never read the book. And so I'm reading this book, and basically one of the elders from one of the indigenous nations ends up showing up in the new town and says, you guys are in for a terrible winter. Buckle up. And literally like a day later, it was like, I think the end of September, they would get blizzards 3 and 4 days at a time with only a day or two in between, guys. Now, they were a town they relied on the train coming in. They were it. You know, I think there were like 50 people in the town. None of them had time to sew anything, so their food literally was coming from the train. A couple days before Christmas, they got a massive blizzard and they just couldn't keep up with shoveling the tracks, and the train didn't come, and they didn't get their Christmas, and they were running out of supplies, they were running out of food, and where they were, there were no trees, and they were running out of coal, so they literally had to go out and get swamp stalks and weave them together to burn in their stove to stay warm-ish. And the train they kept saying the train is, maybe it'll come this time, maybe it'll come this time. And finally, guys, by the middle of January, they got word from back east that said the train's not coming till all the snow is melted. And they had like only a couple pounds of flour left. So they had to go find some seed wheat, which I don't know if you know what seed wheat is. It's not flour, it's kernels. And they had to grind it in the coffee grinder. They had no butter, they had no milk, they didn't have meat. And so the middle of January, they're grinding wheat kernels to try to make flour for bread, sourdough bread. They had nothing to put on it, guys. And you just imagine that they haven't had basically any vitamin D since October, and here they are trying to make it, and the train didn't come, and it didn't come, and it didn't come, and by March they basically were starving to death. There was nothing that they could do. They couldn't go anywhere because you'd get trapped in the blizzard. And that's when Almanzo Wilder and Cap Garland, two young guys, heroically just went out and drove 20 miles to this guy's place and picked up some seed wheat and brought it back just to keep the town surviving. And it wasn't even meat. It was literally wheat kernels, seed wheat that they still had to grind. And that was their, guys, that was their day. Every day was grinding wheat and twisting hay for the fire from the middle of January until the blizzard. They got the last blizzard the end of April. What a perspective. So finally, the end of April, the spring winds come and they melt the snow, but because of the ferocious wind, it had created, it had driven the snow into the sod. So the sod on the tracks was frozen solid because the dirt is keeping the ice from melting. So they had to go with picks and pick out 100 miles of train tracks just to get a train through. I accidentally hung up on myself. My phone was tired of hearing me. It was May, and the train finally comes, and they're like, yay! And it's a utility train. It's the wrong train. Still eating brown bread. So that morning, Caroline Ingalls makes the last of the bread. Everybody gets a biscuit for breakfast. Whew. And then the train comes. And it's, guys, it's May. It's May. And the end of the book, they're all sitting around the table eating regular food that to them is a miracle. It tastes so good. They have butter and meat. You know, they'd been starving to death for months and months. And something that really impacted me, I try so hard not to cry. This is the point I want to make. Is this isn't pretend. This actually happened. And by February, I think it was late February, they were all pretty discouraged. And Charles Ingalls said, we're gonna get through it. Winter is not going to lick us. It's not gonna win. We are strong enough to last the winter. and they all kind of rallied. And the thing that when I closed the book I took away from it, and it was so perfectly timed, guys, it feels divine to read this book during this time. Yikes, my hair. The thing is that they didn't know how much longer it was going to be till they didn't know when the trains were going to come, and they didn't know how much longer winter was going to last, how many more blizzards were going to happen, but they knew that it would end. The earth goes in seasons, and they said winter is going to feel like it's going to last forever, but it can't last forever, and it won't last forever. And we don't have a lot of food, but this is going to end. And then, when it's over, we'll just do what we need to do. Now, they didn't have any money, so it's not like Charles could just go back to work and start making a family income again either. They didn't really know exactly what was going to happen when the blizzards were over. They just knew that they would keep going. And I came away from that so astonished, humbled, and encouraged. And so I just wanted to leave that with you today of, we don't know how much longer this is going to go on. And a lot of us are singing the same song of saying, finances, trapped with kids that are picking up on our anxious mood, sleepless nights, uncertainty, jobs, future. We don't know the future, but we do know it's going to end at some point. And when it ends, we'll do what we do. We'll do what we do. We'll pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, and we'll keep going, and we'll make the world beautiful, and we'll plant our seeds again, and we'll have a Thanksgiving with our family and say how blessed we are that we were able to get through this. And those that we've lost, and those that are still with us, how fortunate it is to have that legacy surrounding us of we're keeper goingers. And I guess that's what I wanted to say and to share my heart. And it's worth picking up a copy of that book for sure and reading it during this time. Such a perspective, and to see that even though we're going through, the cause of what we're going through is different, we're kind of going through the similar thing, and people before us have gone through this. And so anyway, love you guys bunches, and hope you guys are having an awesome day.